Hello, everyone. This is MC Deck Discussions, and I am Abby Small. And today we have what you might consider a deck request. I'm not really sure what to call it other than a deck request. Really, it's more like a deck offer. So I had posted a video on my, a deck discussion video on my original Wasp Aggression deck. And I got into a conversation with at Prufrock or Proofrock. I'm going to assume it's like Prof Rock, like Professor Rock, 1977. And they mentioned that they didn't have a number of the cards. They don't have the same collection I do. They didn't have a number of cards, specifically a card like Moon Girl, to include in the deck. So that being the case, I said, oh, well, let me know, what packs you'd like me to restrict myself to, and I'll put together a deck with that. And so I did that, and then they went ahead and, tried it out. So I wanted to go ahead and show this deck. And the other part that I didn't do at the time was also give some tips on running Wasp, because the first time I played Wasp, or maybe the first few times I played Wasp, I actually didn't like her very much because I kept comparing her to Ant-Man, whom I had already played and really enjoyed. And then it was that I was trying to play Wasp in essentially the same way I played Ant-Man. And I found that, at least for myself, that did not work. Partly because Wasp doesn't really have a lot of, resources, and her kit is kind of expensive. And so it can feel like it's like an awkward deck to play. So that was the case until I finally realized, after hearing some another content creator, D20, that with Wasp you actually have to flip down. And I know D20 doesn't actually like to flip down that much, so I'm not sure I learned it from them. Maybe it was just that because it's been a long time, maybe he said that he really liked Wasp a lot, and I couldn't figure out why. Maybe I finally figured out why. So I'm not sure exactly how I figured it out, but eventually I realized, to run Wasp well, at least in my opinion, you need to go down to the alter ego side at least somewhat regularly. And the reason for that is you have to be able to take advantage of her alter ego side. And she has this girl action, GIRL action. Shuffle up to 2 cards with a printed mental resource from your discard pile into your deck. And that's actually what really helps you to generate the resources you need in order to run her deck well. Why is that? Well, there are some really powerful mental resource cards, and they come even in the core set, and that would be Nick Fury. And we go down here to the Genius card. So my main goal in the beginning is to recycle those back into the deck. And there are other great cards too to recycle back into the deck until you get to Nick Fury. But once you get to Nick Fury, he tends to be the main card you want to put back in your deck, along with Genius. And then when you look to go ahead and do your, start to really attack once you get your kit set up, because with Nick Fury drawing cards, a bunch of cards all the time, and being out there to do some thwarting and attacking, being able to defend against the villain when the villain attacks, all of those things being available to you, start building out your kit as you cycle through your deck relatively quickly, at least once you have Nick Fury out. So, and then in the meanwhile, this deck has a lot of other allies. Why is that? So first of all, this is a solo deck, and I tend to like to include a fair number of allies, but notice this has 12. So this is now a specific build, but I did want to mention that up front. So your main mechanism for achieving the goal, so the first goal, actually, let me just go with that, is to get 2 of your 3 big supports out. So preferably like Helicarrier and Quinn Carrier, or Helicarrier or Quinn Carrier and Avengers Mansion, so that you have resource generators and regular card draw, which really serves as an extra resource generator as well. And eventually you get Boot Camp out. I don't prioritize that in the beginning. So your goal is to get those set up, and then once you get two of the 3 of those set up, you can start going after the villain. And the main mechanism for achieving that is what I mentioned. You're using Wasp's GIRL ability in her alter ego form to recycle Nick Fury and Genius back into the deck. So I want to mention that up front, because that's something that I haven't really been mentioning, is kind of giving a tip of, at least in my opinion, how Wasp functions well. So once you have that going, so there are other important elements of this deck I just want to mention real quickly. So first of all, it is restricted to these sets that was mentioned to me that I could use in order to build the deck. So that's where these come from. Another important element of this is this one does happen to include that we could have Professor X, and in this case also Psylocke. So if we're going to be able to go to alter ego form, we're going to want to regularly confuse the villain. And both of those, so especially Professor especially Professor X, as they both, Professor X and Psylocke, have the mental resource icons. So you can recycle both of them, but Professor X is the one that I prioritize because it only costs 3. Psylocke is really nice though when Psylocke comes out, because Psylocke has the ability to confuse the villain twice. So that is an important one too. I tend not to recycle Psylocke, but once Psylocke comes into play, Psylocke has the ability to do that. But I could always recycle Psylocke as well. So that becomes very important too, is to confuse the villain. All right. So what are the other elements of this deck? So the other reason, and the specific reason why this has so many allies, is because we are running boot camp. So the name of this deck is Camp Cannon. So that's because of 2 reasons. One is we have boot camp in here so that we can get the most of our allies, right? So boot camp gives 1 ATK plus 1 ATK to all of your allies. And then the cannon part of it is because we're also running hand cannon, right? Which allows you, it gets 3 charges on it and allows you to get remove 1 charge when you your hero makes a basic attack. You exhaust hand cannon, remove 1 charge. You get +2 attack for that attack, and the attack gains overkill. Notice though that I did not mention that boot camp is one of the goals to get out. Neither is hand cannon. Those are just things, if you happen to get those out, they will provide extra benefits with your attacks. But for the most part, your allies are going to be able to come out there, handle the minions, handle the thwarting, plus Wasp can do a lot of that herself too. But a lot of the heavy damage, and they'll be able to do damage to the villain, but a lot of the heavy damage is going to come from her 5 attack cards, right? She has 5 attack events, 3 pinpoint strike, and 2 Wasp sting. So I want to mention another strategy that's really nice with Wasp. So when you're in tiny hero form, this pinpoint strike card does 8 damage instead. So you do 7 damage plus 1 more because you're in tiny hero form. And then on top of that, it gains overkill. So you can use this to clear a minion, gain overkill, and do damage to the villain, possibly get rid of what do you call it? That card that defends them from defense, a tough card, but also get around if they have retaliate. But on top of that, the tiny hero form has this small but mighty response for its ability. It's a response after Wasp or an event you play defeats a minion or side scheme, deal 1 damage to the villain. So that is able to also deal an additional damage on top of that. So that can be very powerful. And once your kit is set up, there are going to be times when you're going to want to recycle Pinpoint Strike back into your deck possibly as well. But with all these allies out here, they continue to protect Wasp, allowing her not to have to use her own healing very much, her own recovery when she's in her alter ego side. And so that also allows her to use her other card that can be really powerful, which is the rapid growth card, right? So when she attacks with this or thwarts with it, she can get, she'll change to her other hero form, her giant hero form, and get +2 to that power for this use. So, the really cool thing about Wasp is that she can spread her damage or her thwarting out across multiple schemes, if it's thwarting, across multiple enemies, if it's an attack. So there it is. So notice we have some extra cards in here too, like attack training. So we have some X-Men allies in here that can be enhanced with the attack training cards as well. And we have combat training so that Wasp can hit even harder when she's in either side. So in any case, there's the deck overall. I am not publishing this deck, so it's not available publicly, but all of my decks are available publicly if you have the link. So I will be putting the link for this in the description. And I want to mention, if anybody else wants me to ever build a deck, I'm happy to build a deck, not necessarily for you, right? It could be that you want me to build a deck for you, but ask me to build a deck with any restrictions you want. It could be that it's for your own packs. It could be you want to see me build it around certain types of cards. Then I'm happy to do that and share that deck with whoever requests it, and maybe even do a video on it. All right. Have a good one, everybody. I'll have another one of these coming up for for justice as well. So be prepared for that to come out in not too distant future. All right. Have a good one, everybody.